This haunting account comes from Richard, a rideshare driver who preferred working the late-night shift in a small, quiet town. The darkness and solitude suited him. Fewer passengers meant easier money and less stress. But one fateful night would change his life forever, leaving him questioning everything he thought he knew about the world. It began like any other shift. The night was crisp, the roads were empty, and Richard enjoyed the serenity of the quiet drive. At around 2 a.m., a notification pinged on his rideshare app. The pickup point was just outside of town at the edge of an old, scarcely traveled road. The destination was even stranger, a spot on a narrow, winding path deep in the woods. Locals called it Whispering Hollow, a place shrouded in urban legends and whispered warnings. Richard paused, contemplating whether to accept the ride. He'd heard the stories, tales of ghostly figures and cars breaking down mysteriously in the area. But dismissing the superstitions as nonsense, he decided to go. A job was a job, after all. As he neared the pickup location, his GPS began acting strangely. The screen flickered and the route recalibrated, leading him farther down a dimly lit, desolate road. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches forming eerie shapes in the glow of his headlights. Finally, his car illuminated a lone figure standing by the roadside. It was a woman, dressed in a flowing, tattered white dress. She appeared out of place, like someone from another time. She stood motionless, her face pale and her long hair blowing slightly in the cold breeze. Richard rolled down his window. "Did you request a ride?" he asked hesitantly. The woman nodded without speaking, her gaze distant. She climbed into the back seat, and as soon as she shut the door, an unnatural chill filled the car. The faint scent of old flowers like funeral arrangements wafted through the cabin. Richard tried to make conversation, asking where she was headed and if she was okay, but the woman remained silent, her eyes fixed straight ahead. Something about her presence unsettled him, but he pushed the feeling aside and focused on the drive. The journey grew stranger by the minute. The GPS continued to glitch, recalculating the route and leading them down narrower and darker roads. The dense forest closed in on them, and Richard felt as though they were being swallowed by the night. Every so often he glanced at the rearview mirror. At first, the woman sat still, her expression blank. But as the drive continued, Richard noticed something odd. Her reflection seemed distorted, almost like a smudged photograph. At one point, he could have sworn her face was replaced by a dark void. After what felt like an eternity, the woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, and it sent a chill down Richard's spine. "Stop here," she said. Richard looked around. They were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and darkness. There was no house, no path, nothing but the oppressive silence of the forest. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice trembling. The woman didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed on something unseen in the distance. Reluctantly, Richard stopped the car. When he turned to ask if she needed help, his blood ran cold. The back seat was empty. Panicking, Richard jumped out of the car and scanned the area with his flashlight. He called out for the woman, but there was no trace of her. The scent of flowers had disappeared, replaced by the damp, earthy smell of the forest. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and his own ragged breaths. Shaking, he got back into the car and locked the doors. As he sped away, his phone vibrated. A notification from the rideshare app appeared on the screen, marking the ride as complete. But the name of the passenger had changed. It now read, "Unknown." When Richard returned to town, he shared his story with a local bartender. The man's face paled as he listened. He told Richard about a woman who had died decades ago in a car accident on that very stretch of road. According to legend, her spirit wandered the area, looking for a ride home. Richard never drove at night again. To this day, he avoids the roads near Whispering Hollow, haunted by the memory of the phantom passenger and the lingering chill of her presence. What would you have done in Richard's place? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned for more terrifying encounters that will make you question reality.